Colorado, and then, yeah, they wouldn't have enough water, and it didn't snow that much.
Right.
Hello?
Hey, anybody hear me now?
Yay!
Ugh.
You a live person.
Boy, I'll tell you. Sometimes,
Technology is great, but sometimes, yes.
Yeah, there'll be a little glitch.
Yeah, well, what happened this morning, interestingly enough, is it was about 10 minutes to the time that we were supposed to start the class. And I opened it up and Zoom notified me, we're not going to do this. You have to update your software.
Oh, that takes a lot of time.
Oh,
Wow. So I did. I hit, okay, update software. So we updated the software, everything else. It took me into the meeting, as you all know, and you couldn't hear it. So it's like, So anyway, happy Monday, everybody. How are we all doing?
Happy
Monday.
Monday. Good, yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. So now that we can all hear each other. Oh my God. All right. So I got a couple things going on today, and I'm going to leave it. I'm going to ask your opinion. Okay. We have two options. Okay. We can look at a lot of different stuff today. Like little short, videos. And or I have a video by, one of our favorite people, good old Waldemar. And but this thing is almost 4 hours. Yeah, I know. But it's about Impressionism. It's the whole Impressionist movement. Pizarro, Monet, Degas, all of them. And we would do that in 2 settings. Okay. So we would, if we did that, we would probably do it today. And then on Wednesday, rather than, doing our regular Wednesday thing, we would watch the second half. Anybody got any, opinions about that? Likes, dislikes,
sounds good to me.
John, how do you feel about that?
I feel fine. I just wish there's a different narrator, but that's
Oh, you don't want it? No. I thought it was kind of fun, yeah.
But I'm all in for 4 hours of Impressionism. Yes.
Okay. All right. How about you, Veronica?
Oh, yeah, I'm good with it too.
Okay.
Now,
And-
which narrator is it? That other guy with the glasses?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, he's funny.
Yeah, he is. He's a lot of fun. Yeah, he's always got interesting stuff to say. And then
Yeah.
Bernice, how about you?
Well, since I pop in infrequently, I really don't have an opinion.
You don't?
No, because I may be here, I may not be here.
Well, we all may be here and we may not on Wednesday. We don't know, We all hope we're here on Wednesday, but
It's more likely than not, I won't be here on Wednesday.
more than likely. Oh, okay. Because I was about to say, you might get so enthralled in this, that you might just have to come back on Wednesday.
Okay.
You might.
Why not leave the second half for the following Monday?
Well, we could, but that's kind of a big gap.
True.
Yeah. And I know you guys attention span and memory. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. What did he say last
I'm
week?
sorry.
Uh,
Who's this? Who are you?
Are you saying we're old?
no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that, a week is
Which is not a bad thing.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
a week is
I'd rather be old.
yeah, a week is a long time, and a lot of stuff happens, and you have to go back, and sometimes it takes a while for it to like, oh yeah, okay, that's what we was talking about.
That's true. That's true.
So that's why I was trying to keep it closer.
Right.
But I mean, if you guys
But
if you guys
2
want,
hours. 2 hours can have the same effect.
yeah, it can. Yeah. But I mean, if you want to put it off till Monday, we can do that too. You know, that's fine. It's a, I am here to serve. There we go.
Well, let's go with it today, and then Wednesday, play it by ear, see who's here.
Okay. All right. So here we go. I hope you have a cup of coffee, orange juice, something. Okay.
Carrot juice.
Carrot juice, whatever floats your boat there.
Too healthy.
A double shot of bourbon, whatever,
Hey.
right? All right. So here you go. All 3 hours and 54 minutes and 48 seconds of it.
I see 15 minutes.
That's the commercial.
I know. I'm just being facetious.
Okay, well, we're gonna get past this ad. All right.
Hello, this is Valdemar Januszczak, art critic, producer and presenter of documentaries. Thanks for watching Perspective, YouTube's home for classical art.
Perspective.
In this series, we're going to be looking at some of the greatest art ever painted and the greatest painters. Monet, Renoir, Van Gogh, Cézanne, Gauguin. The story of Impressionism is their story. It's a story of rebellion and courage. Monet painted some of art's bravest pictures. Renoir, some of the liveliest. Degas unleashed the ballet. Seurat unleashed the dot. Van Gogh, well, he unleashed colour. I think it's the most exciting mutiny in art. The days when everything changed. With a heart in love, like a novel at all, and something treats me to you, and a cup of coffee for you, and to learn its language and speak it to you. And 70 men should be in the know, 70 men don't know how at all, and 70 men wouldn't want this dream, and 70 men would run to a hole, and 70 men would be wrong, and 70 men never see at all, and 70 men haven't tasted snow. Morning, Tom.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Dick.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Harry.
Good morning, sir.
This is the room that Monet, the most famous of the Impressionists, actually used to stay in when he came to London. He used to paint the Thames from this very window. In those days, of course, Monet wasn't as famous as he is today. These days, Monet and the Impressionists are everywhere. Terribly popular, terribly familiar, terribly commercialized. I've been Impressionist shopping, and look what I've got. Impressionist umbrellas, Impressionist pen, Impressionist bag, Impressionist jigsaw, this fine Impressionist shirt, and above all, Impressionist chocolates. Boxes and boxes of chocolates. When you're looking for art to put on a chocolate box, you turn to the Impressionists, don't you? Because these days, their art seems so sweet and pleasant. But what if Impressionism never was this charming, sugary art movement we like to imagine? What if the real story of Impressionism was the story of a revolution and overthrow, artistically decorated and hardcore? What if the art of the Impressionists belongs not on a box of chocolates, but on a case of dynamite? The Impressionists never really had a plan. History threw them together to change art. Some contributed more than others, but they're the ones we need to follow. If their story began anywhere, it was here, St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, where the painter Camille Pissarro was born on July the 10th, 1830. Pissarro isn't the best loved of the Impressionists. He's not the best known or the most popular. Monet's more famous than him, and so's Renoir. But none of them could have got together and did what they did without him. Pissarro was the glue that held Impressionism together. The Impressionists had 8 exhibitions, and that's it. 8 shows that changed art. And the only artist who appeared in all of them was Pissarro. The Pissarro family ran a hardware store in the high street, supplying useful stuff for the boats coming in and out of here. As far as art is concerned, however, the most interesting thing about them is that they were Jewish.
The thing that's different about a Verbo vacation home, you always have the whole place to yourself. Just you and your.
If I were to ask you to name me a great Jewish artist before Pissarro, you couldn't, because there weren't any. Plenty after him, of course, Rothko, Modigliani, Soutine, but none before. Because the Jewish religion forbids the making of art. You shall not make for yourself any likeness of what is in the heavens above or on the earth below, says the second commandment firmly. That's why there are no paintings or sculptures in synagogues. Pissarro's family were orthodox enough to follow most of the observances of their religion, but they also had reason to challenge it and turn against it. Pissarro's father, Frederick Pissarro, had been sent to St. Thomas to take over his uncle's business when the uncle died. To everyone's horror, he quickly started a relationship with his uncle's widow, Rachel Pissarro. And even though she already had 4 children, they got together and had 4 more, including Camille Pissarro. The synagogue disapproved. How could it not? Nephews shouldn't father their auntie's children. The marriage was never accepted, and a crack appeared in the ancient relationship between the Pissarros and their faith. Whether he was supposed to or not, Pissarro drew all the time. He was always at it. Down on the docks, watching the fishermen. Out in the fields, with the working women. It seems so modest, this Impressionism, to be so sensitive, so quiet. But don't let this quietude fool you. Powerful sins are being committed here. A Jewish boy is breaking an ancient taboo. Not just any Jewish boy either, but a Jewish boy stuck 4,500 miles away from Paris in the Virgin Islands, just about as far away from the story of art as you can get. If Pissarro had been alive in any other era, there would have been no chance of him becoming a painter. Not only was it a religious no-no, but the practical difficulties were immense. Where around here would he have got materials he needed to become an artist? In those days, painters needed so much stuff, and the colours they used were so complicated to prepare. This is lapis lazuli, semi-precious stone, incredibly expensive. It comes from Afghanistan, but the best blues were made from this. First, though, you needed to crack it and crunch it and grind it and turn it into paint. And when all the grinding and oiling was done, how do you actually carry around this paint that you've made? In those days, you shoveled it into pig's bladders. Yes, pig's bladders. So at the beginning of the 19th century, painters needed all this to make art. But then, in 1841, in England, an American called John G. Rand, working for good old Winsor and Newton, invented something remarkable, something brilliant and inspired. Rand came up with this little beauty here, the paint tube. The impact of the paint tube on art can't be overestimated. It changed everything. This freed art. It freed Pissarro, made Impressionism possible. The new paint tubes were spectacularly portable, so easy to carry wherever you went. Squeezed quickly out of its quick new tube, the new paint could capture quick new movement. All sorts of elusive light effects were now easier to record and enjoy. It had a liberating effect too, and seemed to free the spirit, as it definitely freed Pissarro's. None of this had happened yet, of course. All of it was now possible. First, though, Pissarro had to get out of the Virgin Islands and into Paris, where the quick new paint was particularly useful. But when he finally got here in 1855, Pissarro found a city fast-forwarding crazily into the future. What was happening to Paris was scary. The city was in the middle of a huge transformation. Everything was changing. The old Paris was being knocked down, and a new one was being rushed up in its place. Pretty much all of the Paris that we love today, the boulevards, the parks, the big vistas, all that was created now.
If you see this plant in your backyard, don't step on it. This neglected plant is more delicious and nutritious than most.
And it was happening at breakneck speed. Paris was now moving to a new rhythm, and that rhythm got into its art. It had to, didn't it? Renoir, the second of the great pioneering Impressionists, actually grew up next to the Louvre on what is now the famous Rue de Rivoli. This is it today, one of the poshest and most fashionable addresses in Paris. But when Renoir grew up here, the Rue de Rivoli didn't even exist. And this bit of Paris didn't look anything like this. It was more like this, a wobbly medieval ghost ride of spooky streets and twisted alleys. Infested with rats, sewage slopping in the streets, the old Paris had barely changed since the Middle Ages. It was a superb home for the Hunchback of Notre Dame. but not for an impressionist. So why the big rebuild? Why start Paris from scratch? Because France had a new emperor, Napoleon III, nephew of the first Napoleon. And when Napoleons take over, they change things. For the citizens of Paris, turfed out, moved on, these were terrible times, an era of disruption. But for the Impressionists, the conditions were perfect. A city was changing beyond recognition, so its art needed to change as well. Renoir's father was a tailor, and apparently little Renoir learned to draw by using his father's chalks on the floor. You know, those tailor's chalks they used to mark out their designs. But the most interesting part of his education came in his teens, when he started to work for a posh manufacturer of luxury porcelain, churning out vases and teacups and plates. Napoleon and his lackeys liked eating, drinking, and commemorating their achievements, so they needed lots of posh plates to dine. Renoir was 14 when he was sent to work at Levi and Sons as an apprentice porcelain painter. Renoir was so good, so quick at painting flowers on plates that he soon made enough money to buy his family a house. It obviously influenced him too. Look at the way people paint these plates with tiny brushes, dabbing on pretty little effects. So decorative, so luminous, so Renoir. What is the difference between painting porcelain and painting pictures?
With porcelain painting, the painter has to work horizontally with their elbow locked and their hand locked so they don't shake. We work on things that are very fine and delicate, and you have to learn to control your movement so that it's only the wrist that moves.
And the colours are very decorative, like this blue. You don't find that in paintings.
This blue is cobalt blue, which has been used since antiquity by the Chinese. The speciality at Sèvres is to apply it in many layers to create a depth of color that isn't found anywhere else.
Une profondeur nulle part égalée. Et c'est la marque de...
The mark of Sèvres, it's cobalt blue.
If we jump ahead a few short years and look at what Renoir went on to paint when he became an Impressionist, we can surely recognize the ceramic origins of his feathery, flickery, and decadent touch. Painting pots made Renoir different from everyone around him.
All right, so it plugs it in. Perfect. We'll start the car.
These really were crazy times. Here's an amazing statistic. In 1850, there were 1 million people in Paris. By the 1870s, there were 2 million. Paris doubled in size in a couple of decades. And these mad decades are exactly the decades in which Impressionism was born.
The new Paris was packed with temptations. 1/3 of all the babies born here in Impressionist times was illegitimate. Poor old Pizarro, thrown into the deep end of this cauldron of change, couldn't have known what had hit him. He was just too sensitive and well brought up for what was going on here. Here's this small-town Jewish boy from the West Indies suddenly finding himself in the wildest and most sinful city on God's earth. Do you know what a lorette is? It's a French word, a piece of 19th century Parisian slang, which means a pretty girl, a girl with loose morals. You find them all over Impressionist pictures, smoking, drinking, giggling, giving you the eye. They're the new woman, the woman of today, enjoying freedoms they'd never had before. Lorettes are the kinds of girls respectable men stay away from. And they're called Lorettes because most of them lived around here, the Rue Notre-Dame de Lorette. And so too, at number 49, did Pizarro. Pizarro's mother came to Paris too, to keep an eye on him. So did his stepsister, Emma, and her 5 children. There was a cook as well, a maid, and a black slave brought back from St. Thomas. So that's 5 women, 5 children, plus Pizarro, all crammed into there. Small wonder his earliest Paris paintings tried so hard to get away from it all. These quiet landscapes, painted on day trips out of the city, are the works of a man from the tropics who's in love with light in all its varieties. On that corner there, where the Gothic building is, there used to be a beaten-up painting studio, the Académie Suisse. It was what they called a free studio, meaning no one actually taught you anything in there. You decided for yourself what you wanted to paint. Pizarro, who had strong anarchist tendencies from the start, enrolled at the Académie Suisse as soon as he got to Paris. One day, a new student turned up at the studio, a handsome young chap, a bit of a dandy, who cut quite a dash with his lacy cuts and his Antonio Banderas hair. Pizarro got on very well with him. This new chap also enjoyed painting outdoors. The Lorettes, they liked him too, which they made pretty clear. I only sleep with maids and duchesses, replied this new chap haughtily, preferably duchesses' maids. That was Monet. Claude Oscar Monet was from Le Havre, a busy industrial port on the Normandy coast, whose watery textures he was instinctively quick at capturing. Monet was so talented, and the first unmistakable signs of this talent appeared when he was 14 or 15 and began drawing cartoons and caricatures of Le Havre's most prominent citizens. The prominent citizens loved these jokey portraits of themselves. Monet was soon churning them out and making so much money from his comic drawings that he started to dream of becoming a proper artist, a serious landscape painter, quick enough and skilled enough to capture the shimmering, changeable sights that surrounded him.
First, though, there were hoops to jump through, big ones. To make it in the Parisian art world, you needed to show your work at the infamous Paris Salon, the most prestigious art exhibition in the world, where every year some of the world's most pompous pictures were proudly selected and displayed. This is the enemy. This is what Monet, Renoir, Pissarro, all of them were up against, the official art of the era.
My vision improved after I threw away all my eggs. Here's why.
If you were struggling with vision, the surface of a typical salon picture is as smooth and shiny as the paintwork on a new car. Glistening, perfect. That's how they wanted it. To make it in the Paris art world, this is the game you had to play. Everything was controlled from here, the Institut de France, created by a gang of Freemasons in 1795. In here is the Académie de Peinture et du Sculpture. The Academy appointed the teachers who taught here at the École des Beaux-Arts. To get into the École des Beaux-Arts, you needed first to pass some exams, judged, of course, by the academicians. The academicians also made sure your work was accepted for the Paris Salon, because they were the jury for it. If you did well at the Salon, the state, advised by the academicians, naturally, gave you a prestigious commission, like these ones here at the Pantheon. After a few prestigious state commissions, you too could now become an academician and teach at the École des Beaux-Arts, where you passed on your methods to your students and the whole rotten process could begin again. So that is what the Impressionists were up against. That is what they had to get away from. That is why they happened. Churning out Venuses was not the career that Monet wanted. His guilty pleasure was the real world. This was the biggest Monet exhibition of recent years. It's at the Grand Palais in Paris, a magnificent display of everything that Monet achieved. There's the beaches near Le Havre, where he grew up. And here are the forests. He sneaked off to paint with Pissarro. Then, the other end of his life, look at these outrageously brave and inventive water lilies. I mean, how adventurous is that? All that happens later, of course. But I brought you here now because I wanted to give you an important tip for looking at Impressionist art. If ever an Impressionist picture begins to look predictable or boring, think you've seen it before, another seascape, another riverside view, what you need to do is get closer. Shuffle right up to it, as close as you can. If you're in a museum, get as close as they'll let you. Really look at what's happening in an Impressionist picture. Notice the brush streets. Look how brave they are, how cocky and adventurous. A new language is being invented to convey new sensations. The closer you get to an impressionist picture, the easier it is to feel the spirit of the revolution. To beat the salon system, various private art schools had opened up in Paris. This one here, down this secret alley, was run by an old boy called Charles Glare. Glare had been a salon painter in the past, specializing in doomy mythologies. But he was of a liberal bent, so the students he had were more progressive than most. Renoir was here already, known to be something of a slacker. "Young man," said Glare to him one day, "you're very talented, very gifted, but it looks as if you took up painting to amuse yourself." So Glare was an insightful old bird.
Hi there. So glad you made it back to Wednesdays at Lord's. Today, we're going to take a few minutes to talk about inspiration. What is it? Where does it?
Renoir had a nose for pleasure, and it led him to the Seine, which he liked to explore with his new painting buddy, Monet. Monet and Renoir would spend their summers sniffing out modern places by the river, where modern people were having fun in modern ways. And that's how they found a notorious riverside hotspot called La Grenouillère, which means the frog pond. La Grenouillère was a ganguette, a floating bar on the river where people came on Sundays for a bit of swimming and a lot of flirting. So infamous was La Grenouillère that even the emperor and his wife turned up here in 1869 to see for themselves if all the stories were true. And in that same summer, 1869, Monet and Renoir turned up as well to change the story of art. The two painting buddies, that's Monet on the right, Renoir on the left, set out to capture the interaction of people and light and water. To do that, Monet and Renoir needed this little beauty here. It doesn't look like much, but this shiny piece of metal made Impressionism possible. It's called a ferrule. It's a tiny tin sheath that appeared on the ends of paintbrushes halfway through the 19th century. Now, before these metal ferrules were invented, all brushes were basically round. The clusters of hairs would be tied to the shaft with string or binding. Now, being able to use a flat brush like that instead of a round brush like that revolutionized art. It completely changed the story of painting. The brush strokes you can make with a flat brush are much more expressive. They're better for capturing the choppiness of the water, the ripples, the flicker of the light on the surface. And you can cover much more of the canvas quickly. If you're in a hurry to record an elusive effect before it disappears, as the Impressionists often were, what you need is one of these. The paintings they made here are the first raw attempts at Impressionism. Quick, fidgety, responsive. It's not just the look of La Grenouillère that's being captured here, but also its spirit. It's all changed now. The Seine was rerouted, and what was previously river is now dry land.
But you can still see this little island that Renoir and Monet painted. It was called the Camembert because it was round, small. So it's all gone now. Thank God. Monet and Renoir and their new types of brush came here and painted it before it disappeared. Before you can paint a riverside pleasure den, you need to get to it. And that hadn't previously been easy, particularly for those old-fashioned painters who still relied on old-fashioned painting equipment. This is a typical studio easel of the time, what most painters were using before the Impressionists. And as you can see, it takes two big blokes to maneuver it in. So painting outdoors with this would have been impossible. What you need instead is one of these. The new portable, fold-away, easy-to-use traveling easel with built-in painting kit. With one of these, getting to La Grenouillère was a doddle. We just hopped on board one of these newfangled iron horses that had recently appeared in France, and you steamed there at speed. The various design subtleties in these new portable easels made them the perfect tool for outdoor painting. So practical, so easy to use. The flat brushes, the ones with those whizzy new ferrules, they all went in there. Tubes of paint that had replaced the big pig's bladders, they all go there. And there's a handy fold-away palette on top. So just a few clicks of the box, and you're a fully prepared outdoor impressionist, ready for any landscape the train can take you to. Sundays at La Grenouillère were exciting and fun, and the train from the Gare Saint-Lazare was always heaving with eager pleasure seekers. But not all the crucial pioneering of the Impressionists was undertaken on Paris's doorstep. Sometimes the Iron Horse needed to make a longer journey.
At Select Blinds, try before you buy. Find blinds and shades that are
Montpellier in the south of France, classy, civilized, conservative, and a long way from Paris. Montpellier is famous for its ancient university and for these sun-drenched lovelies, southern grapes grown by the barrel load for producing the cheap and cheerful local wine. Among Montpellier's richest wine families were the Basiles, who ran this posh establishment, the Domaine de Méric. The Basiles had a son, Frederick Basile, who was exceptionally tall, exceptionally shy, and exceptionally talented. So talented that he might have become the greatest of all the Impressionists if the Germans hadn't killed him first. Basile is the fourth of the key Impressionist musketeers, Monet, Renoir, Pissarro, and Basile. He died in 1870 in the Franco-Prussian War too young to see through the Impressionist revolution, but he was there at the beginning, and he was crucial. The Basiles wanted Frederick to become a doctor, but he failed all the exams and ended up instead with Monet and Renoir at the Académie Claire. His parents were generous enough to give him a full allowance, which his fellow students were happy to help him spend. But what's fascinating about Basile, what really makes him stand out, apart from the fact that he's nearly 7 foot tall, is that his most interesting pictures weren't painted in Paris with Monet and Renoir around, but here in Montpellier, outdoors in this hot, dry, luminous landscape. This is his masterpiece, a haunting picture showing the whole of his family arranged on a terrace at the Domaine de Méric. Mum and dad, sisters, cousins, and their beaux, with Basile himself squashed uncomfortably into the corner. They're supposed to be looking relaxed and informal. They've all come together on a sunny Montpellier terrace for a quiet afternoon of family bonding. So why do they all look so stiff and anxious? Because Basile is more interested in capturing the light of the South than in being nice to his family. Basile and Monet were close. Basile had money, Monet didn't. And so it was useful for Monet and for Renoir to use Basile's studio and occasionally to move in there rent-free. One day, Basile suggested they should form a group of artists with similar ideas. Monet agreed and then forgot about it for a while, as students do. It was also Basile who suggested painting some life-size figures in the most difficult place there is for figure painting, outdoors, in the sunshine, with the figures in front of you. Basile himself never tried it, but Monet did. In fact, he decided to paint an outdoor scene in which the figures were double life-size. It was the height of a London bus, and most of the width of one as well. In the past, pictures of this huge historic size had always shown us events of huge historic importance. Wars, coronations, massacres. But all Monet shows us is a group of his friends on a picnic, having fun, outdoors. Monet's mistress, Camille, posed for all these interestingly backlit women. Basile is all the chaps in bowler hats. It was so expensive to paint that Monet ran out of money and couldn't pay his rent. The landlord kicked him out and kept the giant painting as security. When Monet finally got it back, much of it had rotted away. He could only save 2 big bits. Since the Whopper hadn't worked out, the following summer, in 1866, Monet decided to have another go. Sensibly, the new picture was going to be much smaller, only around 8 feet tall this time. But his chief ambition, to paint a scene of everyday life, out in the open air, in the sunshine, that ambition remained. He painted some women in a garden, lounging around in the sunshine, wearing lovely dresses and not doing much. Painting outdoors is difficult for all sorts of reasons, particularly if you're painting a Whopper. How, for instance, do you paint the top of a picture that's much bigger than you? Monet's solution was to dig a trench in the garden and to have the canvas lowered into it on pulleys. But the biggest challenge he set himself was to paint sunlight directly, exactly as it was. It's actually one of the hardest tasks in art, combining strong sunshine with strong shadows. Have you watched one of those games of football on the television when the sun's shining and throwing big black shadows onto the pitch? The camera just can't handle it. The contrasts are too great. But the human eye can. No one in art had previously painted sunshine as bright as this. He nearly gets it right, but not quite. Some of the passages of painting in Women in the Garden are stunning. Look at the way he's captured the light on that white dress. But overall, there's a strange air of unreality to the picture. It's got a frozen quality, as if all these modern people have been preserved for posterity in a very sunny ice cube. Unreality was never an issue with Pizarro. He was too poor to be unreal.
Roofers are furious about this new product that's going viral. Replace your whole roof in as little as 8 hours? And right now, we're looking for homeowners to experience this futuristic roofing product. Click below and enter your zip code to see if you qualify. Erie Metal Roofs is looking for homeowners to install the newest styles and colors of our next generation metal roofing system. Our next generation metal roofing system is backed by a lifetime warranty and can be installed in as little as 8 hours. And you could be one of the first homeowners in your neighborhood to experience this futuristic roofing system. Don't miss this opportunity to experience the future of roofing. Click the link
Charles?
at the bottom of this video now and enter
Charles?
your zip code to see if you qualify.
Whoa.
This $40 mini chainsaw is taking the world by storm. Don't let its small size fool you.
Come on. I know artists always go on about how tough things were for them in their youth before they were discovered. But in Pizarro's case, the hardships were never exaggerated. He really was exceptionally poor and put upon most of his career. It made him extra sensitive to little things, to places the rest of us might walk past, to people the rest of us might ignore. Where the other painters in his gang were attracted to the countryside by the lunching and the boating, Pizarro avoided all that. His countryside is somewhere you grow things and work hard, connect to the earth, do your bit. So why was he so poor, so put upon? I'm afraid it was that old devil love that brought him down. Pizarro's mistake was to fall in love with one of his mother's servants, the cook's assistant. Julie, she was called. This Julie turned out to be one of the great artist's wives, loyal, dogged, resourceful. But she wasn't Jewish. She was his mother's servant, a practicing Christian. Pretty quickly, she got pregnant by him, none of which went down well in the family. Pizarro's mother, who controlled the purse strings, wrapped her fingers tightly around them and ensured that Pizarro, Julie, and their quickly multiplying number of offspring would never be comfortable and often poor. They moved out here to Louveciennes on the outskirts of Paris, not because the river out here is especially pretty or any of the usual impressionist reasons, but because in those days, the rents here were much lower than they were in the city. They rented the cheapest house they could get. And while Julie, who was born in the country and who was excellently practical and resourceful, grew what she could in the garden, Pizarro continued to paint his sensitive landscapes and set about fathering enough children to populate several families. I don't usually come south of the river in London. It's not my manner. But when you tread in the footsteps of the Impressionists, you end up in some unlikely places. Welcome to Upper Norwood, where the suburbs of London turn into more suburbs. I could have put the sign up in Croydon or in Dulwich or Sydenham, because Pizarro painted in all of them. Amazingly, South London was a crucial location in the story of Impressionism. Important things happened here at a very important time. In 1870, France started a war with Prussia. Big mistake. The Prussians charged across Europe and quickly surrounded Paris. A few brave Frenchmen fought back, but most of them didn't. Monet and Pizarro, both of whom had children and mistresses to look after, fled here to London, where they soon settled into a modest but fruitful lifestyle. London inspired Monet to paint the Thames on a warm summer night, with the Houses of Parliament looming in the distance, looking mysterious and misty. Pizarro, however, avoided the obvious landmarks and sniffed out a London that was quiet, modest, suburban, a London that struck a chord with him. Pizarro painted this view. This one too. And this one. It isn't dramatic art, but it is sensitive and responsive. These quiet English greys, the sooty air, the damp joylessness of living here. It takes great sensitivity to enjoy a place as ordinary as this, and great pictorial talent to paint it. Something else happened in London, which in the end was absolutely crucial, because it was here in London that Monet and Pizarro discovered Turner. Britain's finest landscapist was to play a big role in the creation of Impressionism. It's an easy fact to prove. Here is a typical Turner, and here a typical Monet. Case closed. Weirdly though, for some complex French reason, Monet would later insist that Turner had no influence on him at all. I never looked at Turner, he said. Even though the two of them traipsed keenly round the London galleries examining the art. And Pizarro's name is actually in the visitors' book at Dulwich Picture Gallery. Of course, Turner influenced and inspired the Impressionists. It could hardly be more obvious. And when the Franco-Prussian War was over and Monet and Pizarro scuttled back to France, they took back with them Turner's glorious certainty that landscape was a route to the emotions. Whether it was noisy or it was subtle, it always spoke to the heart. Okay, let's see. You know what the French are like about bread. The entire country runs on baguettes. This crusty little beastie has played a key role in the creation of the French identity. Bread played a big role too in the story of the Impressionists. When Pissarro returned to France from England, he found the invading Prussians had turned his house into a stable. He spread his pictures across the muddy ground so their horses wouldn't get their hooves wet. Disillusioned, traumatized, Pissarro decided to move and to start again here in Pontoise in 1872. He began to think seriously as well about that idea that Basile had had a few years earlier, to assemble a group of like-minded artists, an association of some sort, to work together and beat the system. Pissarro looked at various options before setting up his new organization. In the end, the rules for the new group of painters were based on the charter of the Bakers' Union here in Pontoise. Mind you, this wasn't any old Bakers' Union. This was the oldest Bakers' Union in the world. The Bakers of Pontoise were granted their charter by Louis VII as long ago as 1162. So they had a particularly long history of making trouble. Remember, bread in France is powerful stuff. The French Revolution was triggered by bread strikes. So was the Paris Commune of 1871, the world's first workers' takeover. So by using the Bakers' Union as the model for this new group of artists, Pissarro was hoping that they'd inherit some of the revolutionary fire of these dangerous bakers. By the winter of 1873, the plans were complete. 15 artists would form a joint stock company, a cooperative of equals. Their plan was to operate entirely outside the salon system. No academies, no prizes, just the art itself. Degas, whom we haven't talked about yet, but who we're talking about a lot later in the series, wanted to call the group La Capucine, the nasturtium, after that bright red flower that Monet planted in his gardens. We could put nasturtiums on the posters, he said, but he was overruled. Instead, the new gang lumbered itself with the long and unsnappy name of the Société Anonyme des Artistes Peintres, Sculpteurs et Graveurs, which doesn't trip off the tongue, does it? So they had the organization, they had the name. Where were they going to show? Monet knew the photographer Nadar, the most fashionable photographer in Paris, had recently moved out of his studio in the glamorous Boulevard de Capucines. So it was empty. He offered it to Pissarro and his friends for free. So this is where they had their show, in Nadar's chic studio at 35 Boulevard de Capucines. It opened on April 15th, 1874, and changed art forever. What you're about to see is revolutionary too. I've been trying to get in here for 3 decades. It might be the most famous art exhibition of all time, but these days they prefer to keep the doors closed. Pissarro and Monet rounded up all their friends and persuaded them to join. They were a higgledy-piggledy bunch. The one thing that united everyone here was a shared hatred of the salon system. Although this was a photography studio, do you know, not a single picture has survived the first Impressionist exhibition. All we know is that Nadar had painted the walls a tasteful blood red, which has survived. And that Renoir, who did all the hanging, arranged all the pictures, there were 165 of them, by 30 artists, in 2 democratic rows. Small ones at the bottom, big ones on top. Renoir showed 7 pictures and found his Venus in a box at the theatre, with his brother Edmund at the back, getting an even better look. Pizarro had 5 pictures, all of them devoted in a quiet but revolutionary fashion to real places and real sunshine. Degas, meanwhile, painted the ballet. No one had ever done that before. There was a woman artist too, Berthe Morisot. Sensitive, yes. Revolutionary, very. How about this for a brushstroke? Monet showed 4 paintings, one of which was actually painted from up here, from Nadar's balcony. The shimmering view of the Boulevard de Capucines in action, teeming with modern life. But it was the darkest Monet in the show that had the biggest impact. It was painted in Le Havre, in the harbour, in misty and mysterious conditions. A glowing red sun hovering over a black sea, casting a mysterious orange reflection. Renoir's brother, Edmund, who was editing the catalogue, pushed Monet to come up with a catchy title for it. Monet casually suggested Impression Sunrise, and thought no more of it. But a waspish little art critic called Louis Leroy was much amused by this deliberately ambiguous title. In a nasty review of the show, Leroy giggled that this new gang of painters were just impressionists. He was trying to be sarcastic, but the insult stuck. From now on, Monet, Pizarro, and the gang would always be known as the Impressionists.
With a heart in love, not a all it simply treats me to you, and a cup of coffee for you. I'm learning this language and speaking to you. And 17 should be in the know, 17 in the wrong at all, and 17 will love this ring, 17 will go to a home, and 17.
So what do we think so far?
Very interesting.
Yes.
Okay. You guys hear anything new that you didn't know before?
Well, I wasn't familiar with Pizarro, but I thought his family, they were mean. His mother was mean, even though they were wealthy. She'd rather see them starve because he wasn't with who he wanted to be. And I thought that with that happens today as well.
It does.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you know.
Yes.
He was too busy populating the world.
Wow.
Well, he couldn't help himself.
Yeah. Well, he was happily doing, what he did. And and no, mom and the family didn't necessarily go along with it, for a lot of different reasons. Mainly that he was having children with someone who wasn't Jewish, and particularly, since there's something about the Jewish religion that it's maternal, and I guess if the father's Jewish but the mother's not, you're not really considered Jewish, right?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, it's got to be your mother, it's from your mother's line. So yeah, you could see where she might be, have her feathers wrinkled a little bit about that.
She missed out on all of those grandchildren.
Yes, she did. That's
Well, the
for
fact
sure.
the fact is she didn't, though. I mean, she didn't support them financially. And yes, she let them struggle. But no, I mean, she was still, connected to them.
They moved away. They moved a long way away, didn't they?
Well, they did, but she followed them wherever they went. She went.
did. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was one of the things about Pizarro, is that he was like perpetually, excuse the expression, but henpecked. Because he had his mother, his sisters, and of course his wife, and then children and all the maids and everybody else that kind of went along. But that's what families did back then. They,
Oh, okay.
yeah, they kind of like everybody was in one place. That was just kind of the fashion of the day, I guess. But no, she didn't, she was not terribly supportive of his art career and things. And one thing he didn't mention, he talked about the Franco-Prussian War, and you notice that really the Impressionists as a group really formed after they all came back from London, right? And unfortunately, by then, Basile had been killed in the war. See, so that was before the Impressionists really solidified as a group in the first place. But yeah, it was an unfortunate loss. But he still.
Well, Basile is never. I mean, to me, he was a new name. I mean, he's not the name. Everything when you hear about the Impressionists, I don't recall hearing much about Basile.
Well, the thing
Okay, he
is,
was-
yeah, go ahead.
I think you showed him in a video last week, a week before last, highlighted him.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
And the thing is, he was such a pivotal figure within the Impressionists, and the Impressionists never would have happened without him being there. So
Why is he not as popular then? I don't remember hearing about him either. Why is he so
Well,
not?
Well, first of all, he died in his he died when he was like 27 or 28
Mhm.
in the war. So that definitely cut his production down. He was still very prolific. I mean, I think he left several hundred paintings, before he died. And but he never, as far as I know, he never showed in any of the Impressionist shows, in any of the 8 shows, because obviously.
Well, he actually died. He actually died before the movement got really taken hold.
Right. Well, before they, yeah. And the thing is, you see, it was his idea.
Right.
It was. He was the one who planted the seed, for the idea of them making, some kind of formal organization, to actually, promote their art and things like that. And, after his death, it really was left up to Pizarro to move it forward, and Pizarro did a lot of the footwork, you know, as far as, you know, drawing up, you know, the charter and things like that and really organizing it. And you see again, you know, Pizarro is one of those people you hear about occasionally, but by no means is he really the most celebrated impressionist. You know? But, you know, and if history were different and Bazille had lived, you know, through the war or not gone to the war, you know, we might be, you know, celebrating Bazille's work rather than Monet's. So, you know, but it's, you know, that's kind of the interesting and cool thing about history. You know, things happen in people's lives, and, you know, sometimes they don't stick around long enough to meet their full potential. But you know, I mean, and the reason I stopped here was that's kind of the early lead up, you know, to why Impressionism happened. Okay.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's you need to understand what the dynamics were there and why that happened. Did you also pick up the you know, one of the things I liked about this was he gave you sort of the technical background behind how painting changed during that period.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
You know, the tubes of paint,
The brush production.
right? Yeah, the change in brushes because they had never had flat brushes before. And remember that, you know, all of those Academy paintings that had happened before were all done with round brushes. And what can you do with a round brush? Well, they're good for blending. You know, that's why you get all these soft, smooth edges, you know, in these traditional paintings, rather than these very distinct, you know, really expressive marks that the Impressionists had. And so again, you know, very different, you know, and it's because of, you know, that technical advance that really gave Impressionism the look that it had. So, along with the fact that, you know, you had, you know, paint boxes now. They're called French double easels. Any of you who have painted in the plein air class are, you know, familiar with them because I made you lug one of them out there, you know, to paint with, and then go through the, you know, the contortions of trying to set one up. And, you know, I mean, it takes a minute, you know. I mean, there's a system to it, and, you know, it's just takes a little while to get it all together. But once it's there, it's a great tool, you know. So, anybody got anything else to say, comments?
Well, we learned about bread, the bread, you know, why the French love bread.
Well, I don't know if we learned why the French love bread, but they do love bread. But
Yeah.
we definitely learned the influence of that union,
Yeah.
you know, on the Impressionists, because they basically lifted all of the rules and everything from that union, you know, into, you know, the charter for the Impressionists, or the group
Yes.
Impressionists. So, you know,
It was, yeah.
so I
And
mean,
the person, the narrator, and who's the, you know, giving us the historical aspects, he looks different in this one. Is this a older film or a younger? Oh, you know,
I think this is probably one of the early ones
okay.
that they did.
Yeah, I was thinking he looked thinner.
Yes, John, that's and he became successful and really enjoyed the art of eating, which is great. You know, eating is an art, but you know.
Well, you know, I think it had a lot to do with that French bread too.
Yeah.
That did it.
Yeah, right?
They probably did more than one take on that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at that bread and I said, oh, this would be hard to resist.
yeah, it would. You know? And believe me, I mean, I lived in Lyon for 9 months, and it's like one of the staples there is, you head down to the river every morning to get, some dried meat and some fruit, and you have to get bread. You
Yeah.
have to get bread and you have to get cheese.
Oh,
And,
yeah. And a bottle of wine too, because they,
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, I didn't get as many bottles of wine as I probably would have liked to,
okay.
because I had to save money for coffee.
Well, that too. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that was a far more important thing to me than the wine.
Yeah.
And plus, while I was there, I was basically keeping care of a 15-year-old, so it was probably not a good idea to drink bottles of wine.
Yeah, coffee would be better. You have to stay alert, like you said.
Right.
Well, I am old enough to remember independent bakeries that weren't part of a chain store or anything like that, where you'd actually go to a bakery.
Yes.
And those breads and everything else were just like, give it all to me.
Yes, John. Yeah, we can identify with that.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And for the most part, a lot of those have gone away.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there are still, and I don't know whether you guys know this or not. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but in Highlands, the Highlands neighborhood in Atlanta, there is still a bakery there, that they do beautiful breads and different salads and different cheese and meat and stuff. I'll have to look up their name.
Yeah, I don't remember one down there. I've been in a while, but I don't remember.
Yeah, but it's on Highlands Avenue.
Yeah. You want to remember the Highland Bakery? Is that what you're talking about? The
Yeah,
Highland
I
Bakery?
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're
It's
still
a
there.
huge- Huh?
They're still there.
It was a huge building. It ran about a block, I think.
Yeah.
I think they produced, it's still there, the building and the bakery too?
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll have to drive over there and take a look because I thought they
Yeah.
were long gone.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get some really, really good European style baked bread or cheese, that is the place to go in Atlanta.
Wow.
It really is.
It's probably the only place.
Well, I think it's probably it may be the only one left. There used to be one in Sandy Springs here, but I think they've gone away.
Yeah.
But I mean, I used to live down there on Highlands. Go get coffee and stuff in the morning down there. It was like, it was the place to be. So, but I mean, hey.
You've been around, Charles.
Yeah.
Me? I have.
Another Pizarro.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't been around that way. So, I'm not quite bizarre. But
Charles,
anyway, yes.
do you remember being able to bring in like one of those gallon jugs of water empty and being able to fill them up with wine in France?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, yes, that was and it was like dirt cheap. And you could get red or white, and it was fun. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, like I said, I stayed away from the wine when I was in France because I was. It's a long story, but I was babysitting, my brother-in-law who was only 15 years old. So he had just come from Iran and spoke about that much English.
Oh, wow.
And I spoke about that much Farsi.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a interesting experience. We were there for 9 months, you know, but you know, it was an adventure. It was fun. But yeah, I loved living in France. It was really nice. Lyon is probably like one of my very favorite cities in the whole wide world. You know, it really, really just is a beautiful place. And if you ever get to travel to France, you know, a lot of people like going to Paris, but if you really want to kind of figure out what France is all about, go live in one of the smaller cities. You know, it's a very different flavor than what you'll get in Paris. So anyway, let's see, it's 11:39. Okay, so all right, I wanted to ask you guys, all right, at this point, would you like to continue on with this on Wednesday, or do you want to wait until next Monday to do this? The second
We can
part?
continue on Wednesdays.
Wednesday's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay. All
I
right.
do too.
All
Me
right.
too.
Yes, then we will do that. Okay, that will be the plan for Wednesday. Other than that, we had a discussion last week, and I don't know that all of you were here. Okay, but Sabrina and I have been talking. You know, they keep you know, the Department of Insurance, the administration keeps wanting me on site at the Benson Center more and more. And my answer to that was no. But it's no up until this session ends, which will be in mid-September, right? And what I have planned to do is I'm going to continue on with, you know, only in name, the plein air class, okay? And we're going to keep the, you know, we're going to basically keep the same system working rather than, you know, set up a whole new class, okay? But what it's going to do is it's going to kind of morph into an on-site painting class during the winter, during the cold months, right? So when we get to like the, you know, mid to end of October, or, you know, early November, when it starts getting a little chilly, we'll stop meeting outside. We'll just start meeting at the Benson Center. And, you know, the parameters will change a little bit. But it will be more like a studio painting class. The difference being that, you know, I'm not going to be setting up a still life or anything for you guys to paint. You know, I don't want to drive you crazy. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to let you bring in your work and work on it, you know, on site there. The only limitation that I have there is that we can either work in watercolor or we can work in acrylic. We cannot work in oil there, because if you get, you know, 10 or 12 people in the room and they're painting, some people are very sensitive to, you know, the smell of oil paint. And as much as that pains me, you know, because I would love for you guys to continue to work in oil paint, in an enclosed environment like that, where we're more or less forced to use acrylic. Okay. So that's, you know, that's the plan, if you want to know what it is. And of course, Eloise and Bernice, you're always welcome to come up and, you know, sit in on a class with us, okay?
Okay.
Okay, we'll take you up on it.
Yeah, well,
Will those be hybrid? Like, will it be a Zoom and on-site or not?
well, we've never done the plein air class as a hybrid class. And I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that one,
Yeah,
because
I
I'm
mean,
trying.
a regular plein air, the logistics of setting up cameras and or a phone or the video is,
Yeah, but I'm just, in the drawing class, we've kind of adapted that to work, via Zoom,
right.
Because I use that TV to project the images for both class
Right.
on site and there. How that would work with everybody working on an individual piece, I don't know. I'm open to the idea of doing it, and I'm sure we could probably find a way of doing it, to make it work.
Would there be any instructional portion of either acrylic or the watercolor on technique and things
Yeah.
like that?
No, absolutely, yeah. On color, on modifying color,
I
on values.
mean, it could be, it could be like 40-minute or 60-minute Zoom, but the class could still be 3 hours, 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah. Well, we would probably, for a painting class like that, we would probably go the full 5 hours.
As a Zoom wouldn't have to be if you got people working independently.
Right.
Where you,
Yeah, I mean,
you did a shorter Zoom period on the instructional portions.
Yeah, I could maybe do a 30 to 40-minute, like actual demonstration, and then from
Correct.
there, if people wanted to stay on Zoom and ask questions and stuff like that, we could still do that, and you could paint your studio, and and you could share things by, if you had a question, just sending me that image via email, and I could pull it up and share it and talk about it. That's another way of doing it too.
And we could also see you, if you were giving any instructional help to one of the participants, to see what they were doing and what they were painting and what you suggested while they were actually working.
Yeah, now that might be a little more difficult because you're going to have easels facing different directions.
Yeah, that's
Plus
true.
the TV. Now, if there was something really relevant, I might be able to turn that easel toward the TV and then talk about it,
right,
and share it with everybody. But again, it's one of those things where, we're going to have to kind of experiment and play with, when we go inside, and if we're going to do it as a hybrid class. But again, I'm not opposed to trying to do that. I'm sure there's a way that we can work it out and make it work. So
Which day are you talking about?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah. So when we get to mid-October to really through about mid-March, or maybe even late March, we would mainly be inside, and so that would give us some time to kind of work things out and see how it all works. Sound like a plan?
Yep.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna kind of end it there for today. And then Wednesday, when we come back, I'll launch into this, second part of this, and we'll try to watch the rest of it. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
Well, thank you all, and I apologize again for the technical issues we had at the beginning of this class, but computers.
No apologies necessary.
Yeah, it's not
And-
necessary. We know that things can happen like that.
Yes, they can, it seems sometimes. All right. At any rate, thank you all for coming. And
See you all tomorrow afternoon.
yes,
Okay.
hopefully, yes. And by the way, a few of you sent in some work. I'd encourage the rest of you, send something in, okay? And we'll take a look at it tomorrow and talk about it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Charles.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day, everyone.
You too.
Charles.
See everybody. Okay.
Charles,
Yes,
before you
Karen.
go, I don't know if you heard me before, but I went to the Cobb Center, Cobb
Yes.
Art, and I saw your painting there. It was beautiful.
Well, thanks.
And all of them, wow, I was so impressed, so impressed.
Yeah, it's a beautiful show. I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
of really, really good work there.
Yeah, it was excellent. I really enjoyed it.
Good. And for any of you who haven't been there, it would be worth a while to go, just hang out for it'd probably take you about 2 hours to go through the show.
Yep.
What's the address?
30
30
Atlanta Street.
Yeah.
30 Atlanta Street. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's right
and-
off the square.
Yeah, and
All right.
it looks like an old post office building, with big
Okay.
columns in the
Yeah,
front.
I thought it was a bank,
Right.
or I guess I thought it was a bank, but they said no, it was post office.
Right. Yeah.
Did you go during the week, Karen, or on the weekend?
I went during the week. During the
Because
week,
it's-
always.
Yeah.
Yeah, less people.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
What's the admission fee?
I joined up just because I like to support the arts anyway. And it was $40 to join for a year, and you can go anytime.
right.
Otherwise, I think that my friend paid $10 or something.
Yeah, I think it's $10. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
for it. But if you, Eloise,
Mhm.
if you're up to it, they would be a good organization to join, because they do have shows like Metro
Okay.
Montage. But
Mhm.
I would encourage any of you, to, when they do have shows and opportunities come up to show your work, apply.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I think I've been there before. I just couldn't remember exactly where it was.
Mhm.
So I will consider that. That's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to support two organizations in the Atlanta metro region financially by becoming a member, one would be the Atlanta Artist Center, and number two would be the Cobb Merriam Museum. Okay.
But what's two?
The Atlanta Artist Center,
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah, down in Buckhead. Yeah,
Yeah, you mentioned that before.
right. Yeah, but them and the Cobb Merriam Museum, I think, are probably, money well spent, for supporting the arts in the area, but also as an artist, they give you opportunities to show work and to meet other artists and to, be active in the community. So, but those would be my two. Okay.
All right.
And I'm sure there's others out there,
Yes, I recently joined the South Cobb Arts Alliance,
Okay.
and they have shows too.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm trying to, is it Cambry, or they're out on, there's an art center out there just south of Kennesaw, or I guess really southeast of Kennesaw.
Okay, I didn't know the location. All right.
Yeah. And I've showed work with those folks too.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know whether you've also got the Kennesaw Fine Arts Society, and I used to show with them a lot, but the opportunities to show, and they just don't seem to be quite as active, as like the Atlanta Artist Center or the Cobb Merriam Museum.
What about the Booth Museum?
Well, the booth, that's a whole nother story.
Mhm.
Again, it's probably the best kept secret in the art world. It really is.
Isn't it in Chattanooga?
No, no, no,
No,
it's in
it's,
Canton.
Ackworth, Canton, Ackworth, yeah.
Canton. Yeah, it's all the way up in Canton, which is about an hour drive. Or maybe from where you're coming from, Eloise, it's probably like an hour, hour and a half. But
Yeah,
if-
I've been there a couple of times.
yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, but definitely if you've never been there, you really need to, pencil out a whole day and just go up there.
Yes, yes, they have an amazing display of
It
Western art.
It really is incredible,
Mm.
and
I could have sworn that was in Chattanooga, no?
no, no, it's in Canton. It's not all that far away, and their collection is only growing, and expanding. But they've got some of the most amazing art up there. And you may not be that interested in art with a Western theme, but that's a big part of American art history. And I would say that within their collection, they probably have some of the very best American illustrators who have ever worked. They've got a fairly sizable collection by those folks, particularly in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. Who all, when they left illustration, basically did Western style art. A lot of them did it while they were illustrators because they were illustrating these books on Western adventures and things like that. So, but yeah, really, really beautiful stuff. And yeah, definitely encourage you to go and see that as well. And that's not that far away, but there's within a two-hour drive of Atlanta in almost any direction, there's several really, really good museums. Like, for example, you could go to the Birmingham Museum. It's absolutely free to the public, no charge to get in. You could go to the Columbus Museum, which again is one of these hidden gems. And they have a beautiful collection of artwork down there. And it's a great space, as well to show art. And just as an addition, if you're going to go to Columbus, there's also now at the riverfront, the University of Georgia, Columbus, has moved their whole art department down to the riverfront. And my friend and, ex co-student, Bo Bartlett is, he's got a whole gallery there, through Columbus State University that has a lot of his work, on display there. And it's well worth seeing. And if you've never been to University of Georgia at Columbus, they probably have the most modern and up-to-date art facilities along that riverfront for printing, sculpting, painting, just the galleries and the studio spaces and stuff like that. It's worth it just to go down there and just kind of walk around and look at those. And it's open, you can just walk in and walk down the halls and walk into the galleries and stuff like that, and the studios, and just look at the lighting and the equipment and stuff that they have there, including the digital arts department as well. And it's an amazing place. It really is. So, well worth the, I guess, 2-hour drive down to Columbus. So, but if you want to go the other way, you have Greenville, who's got, again, you know, it's a small museum, but they have a beautiful art collection there. And, you know, fantastic place to go. So, you know, pretty much so any direction you move in, you can go see some good art, and, you know, with, like I said, well within 2 hours, you know, out of Atlanta. So if you get a chance, you know, go see some of these things. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Armando's not here, so we don't have anybody rushing out to lunch right now, but I'm sure you guys are all pretty hungry. And hopefully, like I said, we'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Till then.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yep.
Yeah, bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.